or whatever, nature like always finds a way. And
Yes.
when you get rid of one, what ends up happening with evolution, something else is simply just going to replace it. So something may be omnivorous now, but that's mostly because there's usually a carnivore and other herbivores that limit its choices, so it's able
Right.
to choose both. But what
Yeah, I mean,
happens
you
is
might
that
end
when
up
you get
Absolutely.
becoming a virus
hold on, when you
proliferate,
get
right?
let me finish. When you get rid of when you get rid of the main carnivore, all that's going to happen is that the omnivore is going to move into the food web, not food chain. If that's what Avi's doing, they're just going to move into the food web and move over into the carnivorous slot.
The only way to get rid of an ecosystem is to destroy the humus, right? That's the only way. You have to destroy the fucking soil because otherwise something's going to come back. And like, there's just too many different things. There's viruses that will proliferate as soon as you start killing, like fucking carnivores and stuff. It's just ridiculous to think that humans can manage that. It's just fucking this sheer fucking hubris, basically.
Yeah. And one thing I find interesting, I think you're absolutely right, both of you, Tomato and Patty. Um, an example of an animal filling a niche is the western coyote in the United States versus the eastern coyote. In the Northeast, the coyotes were competing with wolves, and then all the wolves were killed. So then a coyote filled the niche of the wolf. And they have evolved since that point in time to where they look more like wolves now than the western coyote, because wolves were killed out in the west much later than in the east, and eastern coyote has taken the role of being a wolf in that ecosystem, like you said. And going to the hunter analogy, one thing that Avi does, he says, I wouldn't kill the hunter for practical reasons, but I'd be morally justified, which is a weird slippery slope in my opinion, because what I think is happening, I think that the reason why we protect the human from the xenomorph is for something different. It's for something like justice, or a positive duty to protect each other as a human. But we don't have duties like that to wild animals. So I think what's happening is there's a mistake. We could change the hypothetical to xenomorph killing humans, kill the xenomorph. Lion killing humans, kill the lion. Xenomorph killing lion, do fuck all. Lion killing zebra, do fuck all.
I would argue that in every case you should kill the xenomorph.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
the sci-fi perspective, but he's just talking about like, I think the real xenomorph, definitely, because it's a parasite and it would totally destroy everything. It's like an existential threat.
Well, I mean, that's not the
I
only
mean,
reason. It's also
if
I mean,
xenomorphs were naturally a part of our environment, that I could understand
I
saying
think in
that
the
they,
environment can
um,
just
huh?
well,
well,
xenomorphs are also more insectoid. They're not really. I don't even know if they're really sentient. They're more like just killing machines. They don't really have the capacity for love. I mean, I know in the third Alien movie. Here's a little Alien trivia that I'm sure Patty knows because I remember the Alien movie. The alien had some opportunities to kill Sigourney Weaver, and she didn't because she was carrying her offspring, and that looked like a little bit of maternal love. But for the most part, I don't think that aliens can feel love. So killing an alien doesn't really deprive them of any future or value. So I don't think there's anything
Yeah,
wrong with killing a xenomorph for that reason.
I
You
mean,
know,
but
but
I don't even think.
aliens are like aliens operate almost like bees, except now some vegans are
Exactly.
talking about, yeah, now some vegans are talking about bees having sentience and shit. So I mean,
Yeah. Why is my username that I don't like it?
Anyways,
betas.
but I mean, aliens. I mean, we don't even have to morally justify aliens because, I mean, if they were in real life, even if they were a natural part of the Earth's ecosystem, we still would have had to, make them go extinct. Otherwise, they would have extincted the humanity. Because I mean, I think in order to protect ourselves as mankind, I think it's important to make aliens extinct. I mean, that goes for. I mean, even if, let's say, there was dinosaurs still around, we wouldn't be able to protect ourselves from them if they were a natural part of our ecosystem, and we would have eventually had to exterminate all of them.
Systems just adjust. So
I mean, we can still. I mean, we can still clone them if the. I mean, we now in real life have the technology to. I mean, the scientific resources to clone them if we really want to study them, but they really are not. Destructive. I mean, they would have been destructive to the Earth's ecosystem. I mean, even if they were a part of the Earth's natural ecosystem, they would have obligate. I mean, they would have like annihilated all kinds of animals and humans and stuff. I mean, they would have just wiped out all
Well,
life on Earth.
Punk, we're in a predator prey cycle with aliens because the Yucha, whatever they're called, what they've done is they've basically seeded the planet Earth with these sentient creatures that can fight back, and that's why we're like the ultimate prey to hunt. And then they also had the aliens there to train us so that they could train us to be better fighters against the predator species.
Wait.
And so every million years or so, the pyramids align with the stars properly, so the predator species can come to Earth, and then we can have this epic battle between man, alien, xenomorph, and predators.
Wait, humans
What the
were created
fuck?
by
I've never
engineers.
heard that, and I read all kinds.
No,
of
the
comics.
humans were created by engineers.
And the
Yeah.
engineers were created
Exactly.
by the Yucha.
Okay, I think.
No,
I mean,
they,
I,
no,
Dun,
no,
dun,
no,
dun.
no, no.
Created by predators.
No,
No,
I'm not being
engineer-
serious, Patty. I'm totally not being serious.
Oh my God! See,
Well, I mean,
you're
I-
setting off my nerd. You're setting
look,
off
I mean,
like
I mean, like,
Created by
You're right. The engineers created humans in the lore.
look,
yeah,
the
I was
nerdy
about to
stuff
say.
is really fun, but like honestly, like if, in terms of the debate with Avi, like the only reason why he used it was just so people could visualize a very aggressive, predator that could theoretically be able to kill humans even in modern times without.
We don't even
but
need that though.
but
Nick?
We
it
can
doesn't.
talk about
It could
it like the
simply
Siberian
be.
tiger.
Yeah,
Nick?
I mean, you can just. Well, yeah, we could exterminate.
Nick.
Siberian tiger.
So
Yeah, what's up?
I guess
Nick,
in his hypothetical,
Yeah.
he's assuming
look at our
that the xenomorphs
DMs.
are natural.
What?
Look at our DMs.
What did you say,
Oh,
Patty?
I'm not even looking at DMs. Let's see around. So look.
Ooh, Nick, she wants you to look at her DMs.
She's sliding in.
Slide on up in those DMs.
Oh, yeah, she sent me a
Sharing is
a
caring,
Goldline
Nick.
camera.
Sharing is
It's very
caring.
cute.
Arco, you're taken. Stop being a slut.
I'm quarantined. I'm bored.
I'm quarantined.
I'm just kidding.
So I
So
guess
honestly,
in
it doesn't really
Avi's-
matter if it's an alien. It can just be a lion-like creature with the powers of an alien. That you know what I mean. So like, it doesn't matter if the actual alien is for you know what I mean. Like, so
Yeah.
it's interesting, right? But it's not going to really, because it's a hypothetical he's created. He can just simply change the alien to whatever he wants, which is what he generally would do if you started, pushing back on specific xenomorph. So it's not really necessary. I mean, like it's so the main issue is whether you would save a human from a predator, and if you would,
Yeah.
then you'd be obligated to save like, so for example, would you save someone who is cognitively the same level as a human, as an animal, like for example, a mentally disabled person from a predator? You say yes. Okay, well then you should be able to also save an animal of the same mental capacity of the mentally disabled human from a lion. Yes, and if your only option is killing, then yes, you have to kill the lion. Okay, well then that means that you have to save an animal of the same level more of cognitive capacity as that other animal from a human, and hence you get to the logical reductio of the human killing the hunter. So it's like you kill it's like if you take all the middleman, the question really becomes, can you kill a human who's about to kill another human? And if the answer is yes, then you see how you can, if you take out all those middle sections, it all kind of fits together. So it's kind of like, it's like a structure, like you can kill a human who's killing another human. You can kill a lion who's killing an animal with the same cognitive capacity as that human, and then you can kill a human who's the same, or a xenomorph who is about to kill the human. So it's like, it's all like, and I didn't explain it very well, but the point is, like, I think that's the argument he's trying to make.
So really, Arco, the only thing you have to do is to create a sound symmetry breaker between the human and the xenomorph. Yeah?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Why? Why would that? No, you wouldn't have to be between a human and a xenomorph. The only way for you to do it is to make a symmetry breaker between the human and the sort of animals that lions kill.
Is
So of
Avi
course,
assuming is Avi assuming that the xenomorph is a natural part of our environment in this hypothetical?
so in the hypothetical, it's like a lion-like predator who is more powerful than a lion, who can basically kill humans, and that sort of has maintained a balance with humans, and populate, and essentially is functioning as like population control for the humans. So like, but in order for you to, the only really way for you to attack it is to say there's a symmetry breaker between uh, either the lion and the human hunter, or between the mentally disabled, between a mentally disabled human and the sort of animals that lions kill. So like so like, and that's of course the name, the trait thing. Like, can you name, a trait that that's different in those two circumstances? So obviously you could between a human hunter and a lion. Humans are different than lions. That might be an easier case to make, I think, than the one between a mentally disabled human prey and a gazelle, because he's going to say that the human prey is going to have the same cognitive capacity as gazelle, is not going to have, maybe is an orphan, doesn't have any humans that care about them. So it's basically just like controlling for all of those factors, all the factors of a human species. And then if you push back that it looks like a human, you can say, okay, we can take a human and put them in a gazelle's body so it looks exactly like a gazelle. And imagine like
Well,
there's a witch who waved a
Would you be
wand and
able
turned a human
to,
what do
into a
you think
gazelle.
he would do to this response, Nick? Here's the response that I was sort of playing with. Tom Regan has this idea about species competence, which is basically the average of what the species' ability to survive in a situation like that. So, for example, on average, gazelles can run very fast and outrun the predators. That's one of the things that they evolved to do to escape things like lions. So that would be a type of species competence for the gazelle. They can also like zigzag really quickly, the way that their body is made, so they can confuse the predator running behind them and get away. That would be another type of species competence. A species competence for humans would be to protect other humans. So it's not related to anything about like the cognitive abilities of other humans that we're saving. It's totally about one of our survival mechanisms that were evolved was to save other humans. It's part of our survival in the same way that running is part of the gazelle's survival. So it
I don't know, I
wouldn't
mean,
be.
I would make the argument that part of my species competence is to protect my cat.
The lion's not your cat. The lion's not a pet. It's a wild animal.
Hold on. Wait, 1 second.
Our species competence would be to protect our pets. So if my pet was in front of the lion, I would save the pet.
So I'm assuming that Avi would say shoot or kill the lion if it was attacking the gazelle.
Yeah.
But doesn't that mean that he should kill the human that's slaughtering?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say the last thing again. I got distracted.
I was saying a lion isn't my pet, and I would be obligated to protect my pets as my species
well, I mean,
competence.
I think that saying that you have more of an obligation to save a stranger human over a stranger non-human, I think is very speculative. I don't think that there's, I don't think that my natural inclination is really any different. I mean, when I see someone who's suffering, I have a natural inclination to try to save them. It's like
What
that's part of
if
my profile.
Well, yeah, but Nick, when it comes to the
Mm.
suffering between the lion and the gazelle, both would, in whatever choice you make, one is suffering. So we need a tiebreaker there.
But there's been very heavily documented distribution of things preferring things that have got closer genetic ties to them. Not like always, but like on a normal distribution sort of level, this is something that exists and is very well documented. Like obviously,
Right,
there's
but that's not a moral argument. You're simply describing what are
I'm
what some of
talking.
our psychological
Yeah,
predilections are.
this
You
isn't
know,
the
but that doesn't
speculation.
necessarily mean that's what we should do.
No. We were talking about innate capacities, right?
Well, yeah, but like, so yeah, okay, fine. So maybe I sort of was implicitly conceding an argument that I didn't want to implicitly concede, which
Yeah.
is that we can't is that we're not beholden to our natural predilections as a guide for what we should do.
Sure.
Morality is a separate thing altogether. So I don't have any, just because I happen to feel more, let's say, like, for example, we've evolved to find, cute baby faces to be more, like, feel more protective over them. So if you have two babies, one of them who has a misshapen face and the other one has a really, really cute, perfect baby face, we might be naturally inclined to want to protect the cute baby face baby, but we have a moral obligation to treat both of them equally and not throw the other one out because it looks ugly.
What is the symmetry breaker between the lion and the gazelle?
Between the lion and the gazelle is the fact that the
Yes.
lion is the causal agent to the gazelle's death and not vice versa, which I don't
Nick,
know either, by the way.
Hold on.
Why
No,
doesn't
go ahead,
the
Ben.
lion why isn't the lion afforded the same sense of entitlement to like pursuit of its own life and happiness as the gazelle?
Also, yeah, would you say that you have a moral obligation to yourself over rather than someone else?
Who, me?
Just
Oh, Nick.
Well, I mean, those are two questions. So as regarding the
they're quite
first one,
similar. They're related.
so I actually disagree with Avi on the causal thing. I think that the causal thing kind of becomes null and void when you're dealing with an animal that's not a moral agent, is not aware of right and wrong. And I don't think we can say a lion is aware of right and wrong, at least not to the degree that we can hold them morally culpable for their actions. So I would actually treat a lion about to kill another animal as more of like a burning building scenario where you have the option of killing the lion to save the animal, but that would actually be not that would not be any more encouraged than letting the lion kill the gazelle, because in either case they're it's basically one lives and one dies. The only thing that's different is that that's the only time where you actually have sort of, it's not immoral to do an act of killing. That's kind of whereas he actually would say that it's encouraged to kill the lion. Like you actually have some sort of like, it's not obligated to kill the lion, but it's actually encouraged because they're the causal agent of the gazelle. And I don't agree with that. And I think the same thing, with the xenomorphs, it would basically be about weighing values. What's more valuable, the predator or the humans that it's killing? Well, obviously the predator has less moral value, so you kill the predator.
Just can we go back to the question? Do you have a moral obligation to yourself over a stranger?
No, you have no moral obligation to yourself. Morality is about others.
So-
It's about interactions with others.
Do you have any moral obligation to be healthy? And
No, there's no obligation to be healthy. There's
you,
no obligation to protect yourself, to survive, to.
if you're not healthy, then you become a burden to other people.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you have a moral obligation not to be a burden to others, but you don't have, but that's an externality. I mean, but as far as your moral obligations do not include yourself.
But we get we arrive at moral obligations because of how they interact with other moral agents, right? So
Not exactly.
Our moral obligations are about our concern for justice. And
Well,
we don't need to be worried about our injustice to ourselves. We have plenty of mechanisms that are built in for self-survival. We generally will take our own needs into account when we make choices. But the whole point of is to provide a check and balance for our natural predilection to protect ourselves and those we love. And justice is about is not about bias, it's about universal concern for justice, not about any individual, not about a family member, not about yourself. It's just justice. Like we have that provides a control for our selfish desires.
One thing that I find a little interesting about the lion being killed, because it's a causal agent to the suffering. When we kill the lion, we create a situation where suffering is entailed. For example, there's going to be a boom in the population of the gazelles. They'll overeat. More animals will starve to death because we are the causal agent of that chain that happened in nature. Therefore, we're morally obligated to kill ourselves in that situation, or to kill the hunter who would kill the lion.
I mean,
because we're the causal agent. If the causal agent is the feature that determines killing the lion, I'm not going to stand by that with Avi, but I would accept something like the consequences of the suffering for the zebra, but then I would make a different argument that we should kill the zebra because there would be less negative consequences by killing the zebra, and the lion still eating the zebra. The zebra would just have no suffering when it's eaten.
Yeah, I was giving this hypothetical to my mentor, and he's a psychiatrist, and he has a very funny response, or it wasn't. I mean, I thought it was kind of funny. He said that he would shoot the the prey, so the prey wouldn't have to suffer, but it was like a compromise. Like the lion would basically he would kill the prey so that the lion could still eat the prey, but the prey wouldn't have to suffer. So but like
wait, obviously
no, that's just my advisor, who's
I would do the same thing, and I don't think it's a matter of justice to kill the lion, because I think justice has to do with normative agents. But when it's something that doesn't involve a normative agent, it's not a matter of the situation itself is not a matter of justice. Like a lightning strike is not a matter of justice.
No, you already convinced me of that. Yeah, you convinced me about the last conversation. Nice, cool. I already conceded on that point. Well, and thank you for that, by the way. Like I texted you, that was very helpful.
But, but I appreciate that.
What I'm saying is like, Avi's not making some sort of claim that we should exterminate all lions, because obviously that would lead to overpopulation, and until we have mechanisms in place to control for that overpopulation, like birth control methods, then yes, it would create more suffering. He's just saying that if in a given situation, like you're right there on the ground, or like let's say in a helicopter, you would kill, let's say, a lion that's about to kill a human. Like you would do it, even if theoretically humans are overpopulated. And killing a human might actually lower the overpopulation and prevent more starvation or whatever. In that given moment, you would kill the predator to save the human. So by that, if you want to be consistent, you should also kill a predator who's about to kill a non-human animal. And then if you're going by the argument that you can kill animals that are the causal agents to other animals' deaths, then by extension you'd have to kill the human to protect an animal, like a hunter. So that's his argument. I think that's sort of the way he's putting this argument together. Of course, that's just my interpretation. So he might have a different thing to say about it. But yeah.
Oh. Goodbye, Nick.
Bye, Nick. Are you leaving?
Bye, Nick.
Oh, I'm not. No, not quite.
Nick,
why is everyone saying goodbye to me?
You're amazing, Nick. I love you. Bye.
So you're.
You're
Beta's leaving.
Bye.
Bye,
you.
Beta.
Thank you for saying I'm amazing. Thank you.
You're saying morality is only about justice. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, yeah. Morality is only about justice, and justice is impartial. It doesn't like have any particular individuals in mind, not you, not your friends, and not anyone.
So we have to craft our actions and change things in order to increase justice, right? We have to guide actions to maximize justice. We have to craft the frameworks of morality to maximize justice, is your position.
Well, I mean, we have to make sure that we ourselves, as intentional agents, as beings of free will, each hold ourselves accountable for our own acts of justice and injustice.
So you're arguing for free will here, right?
Yeah.
How do you escape causality? Because I was going to say that, like, what is
Well,
just
I'm an indeterminist, so
Oh no,
I
I
don't
don't.
really.
I don't escape that. I basically I take quite honestly a pretty irrational position. I think that that morality has to exist because we can't really live our lives without having without holding ourselves morally accountable for our actions. And
I
if we're going to hold ourselves morally accountable for our actions, we have to just accept the fact that free will exists, even though based upon
you
current
can't
scientific
just
understanding, it can't.
This
that's really
might be a derail, but I can answer a little bit about the determinism and free action or free will.
And I am Sid.
If Hey, you want Sid. it, if you're interested, Tomato.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just what Nick just said sounded very, very circular to me. It sounded like, oh, we need justice because we have to pretend we've got free will, and we need to pretend we've got free will because
No, that's not why.
like what?
No, we pretend we pretend we have free will because we need justice. If we don't accept that that we have any culpability for any of our actions,
But then you also
then there's just chaos. There's no it defies everything. Like, so you have to ground your, you know, it's the one you know, thing that I just have to accept, just like a priori that morality exists.
Well,
You're saying that
morality exists when free will exists.
It is
Free will
chaos. You're welcome. We are living in a chaos. If you haven't noticed, well, newsflash, the world's fucked up.
Huh? Yeah. So we have to fight against that, I guess.
No, the thing is, you deciding against that changes you, not the society, not the world. You can have a moral system, you can abide yourself by that. But if when you're saying that the world necessarily has universally have some kind of a moral system, the world's just gonna shit on you, flip you the bird, and tell you to fuck off. Because it's chaos.
I don't agree. I mean, like, all these protests are all about, you know, concerns about injustice. And just a couple of days ago, we were having discussions in here about the injustice involved, or whether you know, or whether there is like racial injustice and all. I mean, these are questions that people are very concerned about. I'm not willing just to throw it all away because we don't have the current philosophical or scientific understanding yet to figure out a way how free will can exist. You know, I'd rather just believe that maybe there's something I don't know about the universe that would account for free will, and just to live my life as though free will does exist, at least for myself.
No, what do you mean? How does it change the fact that free will exists? The very reason, the very fact that this world is chaos is a proof that free will does exist.
that it's chaos in the
Fighting by a system which we are not.
so
Let's get back to justice
yeah,
and
so
morality.
you don't have to have, like, so you were saying, oh, we need to pretend that we've got free will because otherwise how can we act in a way that will increase justice? But we need justice because we have free will. It's like
No. We need justice because justice is you know, that's an a priori. We just need it.
where did that come from?
It's self-evident.
Why?
Mean that we will be provided with it. Sometimes
How do
it's mostly you have to provide for it.
if there's a completely determined universe?
Hang on,
Sid, be
Sid.
quiet.
Sorry, yeah. So just give him a minute. Let Tomato finish his thought, please.
There is a completely determined universe, then how can you say that anything about it is unjust?
I mean,
You can describe it as unjust in the sense of it being not in the sense of having any way to change it, but you can describe it as unjust in the sense of like, I hate it, you know, and I hate it because it's unjust, unfair.
You only
well, Kev, like, just so we don't like go backward, you know, this is the whole argument you and I had the other time, and you convinced me that we shouldn't call that injustice. Let's just call it unfair.
Yes, but I also don't think that the world is universally determined. So I'm basically just granting in a determined world where free will would not exist, a universally determined world where free will would not exist. In that world, the only thing that talking about justice would mean would be a type of sentiment. But I'm like you, Nick, in that I think we have agency, actual agency, not just a sentiment that we call agency. but we actually have the power to settle things. And because of that, we have a duty to settle things.
So to me, you would have to escape causality in some way. So how do you do
Not
that?
exactly. Causality doesn't mean that it's universally determined. What it means is that things lead to other things. The future can still be open and have causal elements. You can have possibilities that are not predetermined, but still, if you look backwards, reverse engineer, you would see causality. The looking back and seeing causality does not mean that the future is closed in a certain position. All we need to know is if it is universally determined or not. And we have seen evidence empirically that it's not universally determined.
So if you have the exact same set of antecedent conditions, do you think that if you replay that in two separate universes, but the only thing different about those universes is nominality, like the name of them, that's it, do you think that they would have different outcomes?
No, I mean, I think there are limits. There are causal limits. Like, for example, I can't fly because gravity, there's a law of gravity that prevents me from flying. That's not what having free agency means. There are limits, but within the limits, I am able to settle things.
But
like, for example, if I'm thirsty, I can settle how I quench that thirst, beer or water. But that's within a limit.
The answer's beer. Sorry.
Fair enough. Fucking Welsh.
So I mean, so not to like just kind of get it back sort of like to the original, because I think we didn't really fully address the kind of the original sort of issue or proposition. I don't think it's a proposition, but because just going back to the whole Avi debate thing, it seems.
Thanks, Nick.
Like, yeah, it just seems like you're like. I don't think. I mean, I personally have. I personally would take moral exception to this idea that we somehow have some more intrinsic moral, imperative to protect same species as a different species that is of the similar, capacity to experience, love and other, and other things that we intrinsically value. So I think. On a moral level, and I'm not saying necessarily people don't have a psychological disposition to protect those that look like them, or to protect cuter babies than uglier babies. But that doesn't say anything about what we should do. So, like, I don't think that actually works. I think that you could make a case that human hunters and lions are different in terms of their intrinsic characteristics, that maybe you could make the argument that a human who's cognizant enough to like brandish a firearm would be small, smarter, maybe more emotionally complex, have a longer lifespan, potential lifespan, all those sorts of things that would give them more moral consideration over a lion. So I think that you can maybe make that argument, on the other side of the thing, a lion is innocent, doesn't really realize what they're doing is immoral, whereas a human hunter does. So that actually sort of pushes in the opposite direction. I mean, generally, if you see someone about to kill a child, you would have a like it would actually like a cop who sees someone about to shoot a child, like that actually would give them, like, our society would give them the to kill the cop, but they wouldn't necessarily be allowed to kill one child who's about to accidentally kill another child, because a child is not a moral agent. So if, like, let's say if there were two children playing in a junkyard and one of them falls into the car compactor machine and the other one's about to hit the red button that's going to crush the other child to death, you wouldn't have the moral right to shoot this child who's about to kill another child accidentally, because they're not morally responsible for their action, even though doing so would prevent a far more excruciating death because the other child would, of course, be slowly crushed to death, whereas the other one would just get a bullet. So the moral agency of the killer does seem to actually have some moral import here. So that would sort of fight, that would I don't know. That's kind of my response. So I don't really. So it's an interesting. It's kind of a complex question. All of these, but certainly I think there's a there's something maybe an asymmetry is that killing is that people are conditioned to killing animals from a very young age. So the moral agency involved in somebody who does something that society accepts, like kill animals, might put them in a different place than different standing than somebody who like kills a child, where people know we're brought up from a very young age that it's wrong to kill children or any other innocent human. So if somebody's killing an innocent human, then they're clearly doing something that they've been taught and they know is wrong. Where someone kills an animal, they've never been taught that, so we should give them more leniency and treat them more like a lion, like someone who doesn't actually have any real culpability for their actions because they're just too ignorant, unaware, that sort of thing. Like a child. So I guess we could treat human hunters like children, and then it would be wrong to kill them, even to protect the animals. I don't know, what do you think?
I take offense to that, sir.
I know.
I'm 24
I
years
did that.
old.
I did that on
I'm
purpose.
just-
I did that on actually, Patty. I did that just for your benefit. Thanks for your good humor. I was like, what is
Yeah, I
Patty
mean,
thinking about what I'm saying right now?
I think like the way I would do it in the
Present company
hypothetical is I would
excluded.
just
There we go.
I would just answer like I answered to you, Nick, about killing the zebra. And then if we start going down these other routes, I would just challenge Avi on some of the positive claims. Like there's a difference between morally obligated and morally permitted, in my view. And so that it being morally permitted to kill the lion is different than I'm morally obligated. But and then the idea that we have to scale up the eradication of predators, that's another question that requires some argumentation, I think. But Avi makes the hypothetical and says, name the trait. No one can name a trait for that hypothetical that feels reasonable or whatever. And then he'll just say, well, that's why you should kill all the lions. And no one can really argue that. And that's kind of like, I think, the play he makes in that debate. However, I don't think it will go down that easily if I am making the claim for that there is no injustice, therefore there's no obligation, and I would do it based on the consequences, and the consequences would be this, but I'm not obligated. And so he would have to make the positive claim that it's an obligation rather than permitted.
Well, what would you say about, like, let's imagine that a wizard waved a wand, and every animal that a lion killed was you could just like immediately teleport that animal into a sanctuary so they wouldn't have to die.
Yeah. Do you mind
if
I change the hypothetical a little bit, because I think it would get at the same thing you're getting at?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Basically,
what do you have in
if we were God, and if we could eradicate all animal suffering and protect all the animals, if we could be God and do that, would we do it? I think that's sort of like, just go to the total extreme of the positive, right? Eliminate all suffering and all animals, no more predation, bring about the peaceable kingdom that God promised in Isaiah. If we could do that, are we obligated to do that? I think that's kind of the question underneath all of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like that's the yeah, like there isn't anything like, but I mean, I guess the reason, I mean, the reason why I didn't really want to go there is, even though that is essentially asked the same question, is because I think a lot of people have the intuition that that hunting is a natural process for lions to do, and so so like the peaceful kingdom actually has the lion laying down with the lamb, so like the lion, and the lion is no longer biologically a lion or even behaving like a lion. So it's a little bit more abstract. I was suggesting that if all the animals are exactly where they are, but we had like Star Trek technology, and we could detect the moment that a gazelle was about to be killed by a lion, and the moment before that happened, the gazelle would be like teleported like through like a Star Trek teleporter into a sanctuary, and then in replacement there would be a replicated, meal for the lion to eat.
Oh yeah,
You know,
sure. I would say
you
I
know.
would say do it. I had a different hypothetical that's quite similar. Instead of teleportation, there are nanorobots that basically provide a kill switch in the animal, and every animal would have the nanorobots, and the nanorobots could like reduce the suffering in the animal's body. So, for example, let's say the lion's about to kill the zebra, and we can tell that the lion's about to kill the zebra because of these algorithms that we put into it. And we can tell like the neurochemicals that are being released in both animals. And so at the moment that the lion is definitely going to catch the zebra, the kill switch engages and it's a painless death. No suffering at all.
But the worst thing that you can do to an animal, I mean, look, painlessly killing an animal is, a little bit better than torturing an animal to death, But the real,
Right.
but the real problem that involves with killing a young animal is that you deprive that being of all their future opportunities for love and joy and all the
Sure,
sorts of things that an animal can
but
experience.
I'm not
So I would
depriving it of
not,
that.
I wouldn't find your nano switch to be really that much better than the way it currently is. But
My point
oh yeah, what?
my point is I'm not obligated to provide that kind of life to the animal. I'm only obligated to prevent the suffering.
No, you're not
to have a
obligated.
positive-
You're not obligated to prevent the suffering either. It's not you. You're not killing the lion. I mean,
No, I
it's
think
just
I think
it's altruism in either case. I mean, so fine. So you're reducing suffering, or it's like that. That's a great thing.
no,
Okay,
no.
good.
I
It's
mean,
probably better
I'm
than-
holding the position that sentient creatures, I might have an obligation to prevent suffering. A negative.
I mean,
right.
I think
But-
it's somewhat.
but-
That's not the same thing. A negative right has to do with a right to not harm someone yourself.
Yeah,
It
I'm
doesn't
just
have
making
anything-
the
it doesn't
negative
have-
right. I'm
it doesn't have anything to
I'm
do-
extending it in a positive way.
Well, you're making like kind of a negative utilitarian argument, and
Only for non-rational agents. So
I
normative
think I
agents.
just don't understand why you're making a distinction here. I mean, if it comes to helping others, reducing their suffering, increasing their pleasure, it's helping others. I mean, if you're making a negative utilitarian argument, obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with all of the the crazy sequela to that, like the big button that will destroy everything. Then you can eliminate everyone's suffering all at once, and nobody lives anymore. But I think so. Another hypothetical that I think that's actually a little better to the one that I gave before is the one where you would if we found a way that we could basically eradicate all lions by giving them birth control, so where there were no more lions, and then at the same time keep the the prey, the former prey species in check through through artificial through like selective birth control, so they can only have one child. They can't have multiple, so they don't overpopulate. So the lions are no longer in existence, and the prey are controlled.
The difference with the sanctuary and the wild is when I've brought them into the sanctuary, I've now essentially domesticated them, and my duties towards them change. My duties towards that animal now in the sanctuary is the same that I would have for a pet.
Well, that's the reason why I thought it was actually better to do the new hypothetical, because in that case, everything in the natural world is exactly the way it is, but you've managed to find a way to eliminate all predators without killing any of them. You simply give them birth control, so they die out, and then you've taken the prey species and prevented them from overpopulating by also giving them more selective birth control. So not to annihilate them, but just to make sure they don't have too many offspring, so they don't starve themselves to death.
Right. But there's this other tricky problem, which is when we change the environment like this, we're not doing it for the sake of the animals that are there now. When we remove a predator, we change what that animal is. We're now engaging in evolution for that animal. We can see this happening with the extinction of something like the American cheetah, where there used to be this, I can't remember what animal it is, but it was like an elk or something. And it used to be much faster, much more like the African gazelle, very light and limbered. And we look at their bone structure, we look at how they lived in the past, they're very, very fast because there was a cheetah they had to run away from. But now they're really fat and slow. Their whole life has changed to the point that we wouldn't describe them as the same animal. We have essentially, not we, but the cheetah's extinction essentially created a new animal to operate in those conditions. So when we remove the lion, we're changing all of these animals. We're engaging in evolution at that point. We're impacting it. So now we have more duties in the wild to how we should do this. Once we're engaging in something like increasing the evolution of animals, now we have obligations to protect them and facilitate that evolution so that they can have reductions in things like pain. And then we would have these obligations of stewardship towards them that we didn't have before once we started to interact with.
And there's other issues as well that go alongside that. So a good quote that I like is, as humans, our ability to change the future is growing much quicker than our ability to predict the outcome of those changes. And some examples of this is, in one area, we killed a load of prairie dogs in America. And this actually, because of a mite that the prairie dogs were carrying on their fur and migrating with, or just traveling with, those mites were actually what ice and water particles attach themselves to create rain downstream. So killing the prairie dogs actually stopped the rain from happening in a quite a large ecosystem downwind. Is the impact of doing these sorts of things are just fucking crazy. You just can't predict them. It's just crazy. To think that we can is just fucking ridiculous.
I mean, I think that's a very good practical argument, and that's why I wouldn't actually advocate for doing this sort of stuff now, at least not like across the board. I mean, I'm sure there are cases where it actually is useful to use some sorts of wildlife management, like selective birth control, and they do have this zona pellucida vaccine, which is very simple to administer. It's a simple injection, and it's a vaccine that actually binds to the outside of the eggs, so that sperm can't bind to the zona pellucida and fertilize the female, and it lasts for several years. So if hunters were to be trained, instead of killing the animals they shoot, instead to like dart the animals they shoot and then inject them with zona pellucida vaccine, I mean, I know that it wouldn't involve sort of the pleasure of taking a life or the meat afterward, but it certainly would help population control, which I know a concern that hunters have. Or an explanation for why they justify doing what they're doing. I'm just simply suggesting that if there's let's say some future world, like Star Trek level world, where we could, actually create good enough simulations and models to predict this sort of thing. I'm not sure if we'll ever get there, but we might at some point. Then we probably would. It probably would be a nice thing, maybe not an obligation, but a nice thing for us to do to eliminate all lions, not by killing them, but by birth control, and then controlling the population of the former prey species, because that would actually eliminate all suffering in the natural world, and there wouldn't be any negative to it, other than the fact that hunting wouldn't exist. And I mean, there's also the negative fact that you're taking away the lion's ability to have kids while those species exist, and obviously raising children is a it's a very pleasurable thing for lions, for any animal to enjoy raising their kids. You're depriving them of that, but that might be a morally justifiable deprivation given the fact that each child kills untold number of animals. So what do you guys think about that as a proposal in the future?
Oh wait, you weren't talking about aliens versus predators, right?
Well, we kind of like moved off from that a bit, but like I'm just, and we can go back to that. We can go back to that. I'm just wondering if you guys have any opposition to the idea that if we could perfectly model these ecosystems, wouldn't it be a nice thing to do to eliminate all suffering in the natural world by doing what I suggested?
I'm more enthusiastic about appreciating sexual acts of xenomorphs, how they reproduce and stuff.
The sexual acts of xenomorphs?
Yeah, how they reproduce. I was more.
I mean, Patty would be better at that, unless we want to talk about, passion in alligators. I'm happy to go on to that topic as well. I don't know why you guys were posting pictures of dinosaurs having sex, but I
I asked
wasn't
them how
there.
do they have sex.
I wasn't
Yeah.
there, but like I swear, like I always kind of looked at reptiles as being kind of like very sort of reflexive creatures, like like very cold blooded. And then I like when I saw those pictures, I googled like crocodiles mating, and I was like, Jesus, like they actually are really like passionate,
Did you
and I
get
think that
hard?
No, no.
I think
It's a
I think it'd be
philosophical
hard
debate.
to I think it would be hard,
Oh, Twistedhippy.
but it would be hard to do that. But I think that there's I actually think it's sort of important to reflect upon the ability of animals to experience ecstasy, because this is one of those things that we kind of look at animals as pain feeling creatures, but they're also capable of experiencing incredible not only emotional connections, but also like incredible kind of physical intimacy, and that could be expressed in no other word for it than joy, and often love. And I think that it's good to remind ourselves that when animals painlessly killed, we're still depriving that whole future of opportunities to experience ecstasy and love and joy, which even I guess even alligators and crocodiles can do that, which I didn't even realize. You know, so I might have to expand my kind of circle of love capable beings beyond birds and mammals to include like all amniotes. But so I think it's interesting kind of looking at that. But anyway, that's totally neither here nor there. I am not proposing that we remove lions' abilities to mate, just to have offspring. I would give them like a zone of pellucid vaccine that would allow them to. And with the males, I would not castrate the males. I would give them a vasectomy, so that like this is very easy too. Just an injection of a chemical that lesions the vas deferens, so they can still actually have sex, but they can't actually have kids.
Yeah, it would seem the reasonable thing to do, considering, right? Considering the alternative.
Nick.
If we value suffering.
Nick.
Yeah.
I suggest you change that profile picture. Is that even a profile picture? Did you defecate on there? I mean, that I'm offended by that. Monkeys are.
Nobody
like
cares if you're offended by it. This is
I'm
the
offended by
slaughterhouse.
that.
You're offended by the instant gratification monkey?
He's on mute temporarily because he's being a bit silly. So carry on.
Oh, this is actually the instant gratification monkey. If anyone wants to read the article, this guy Tim Urban on this website called Wait But Why, just Wait But Why. Look up his article on procrastination, and it's beautiful. And he draws this little monkey as sort of this thing in your mind that prevents you from doing work whenever like he's constantly just trying to get you to blow shit off. It's very funny.
That's not a monkey in my case. That's just me.
Well, I mean, his argument is it's actually there's you and then there's this monkey that
I know. I'm just
and like honestly, the monkey's my nemesis. I mean, this monkey's ruined my life so far. I mean, so I just figure out a way to keep this guy under control.
Did you hear Agnak versus Avi with the xenomorph? Xenomorph argument, Nick.
Which one? A different.
It was.
Debate?
The Ask Yourself on the Discord released 3.
Yeah, it's how this conversation opened up. You weren't here
right,
at the time, but
okay.
yes, he has. So yeah.
So he's heard the Agnak one. Right,
I've probably. I mean, I listened to that whole section when they talked about it, so I probably heard all of them in real time.
Okay. So
yeah,
Agnak
but I thought that
with...
Mr. March. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go carry on.
What I was going to say, the one that I linked Patty to was the one with Mr. Martian, because Mr. Martian was the first person who at the end said, wait a second, if you're saying we can kill lions to save these animals because they're the causal agents of the animals' destructions, then that would mean we can kill human hunters. And Avi then responded saying, yes, theoretically, even though practically it would probably cause a lot of, damage to everybody. But if we could theoretically do it,
Right.
he doesn't have any moral position against it.
Yeah.
And then I tried to push him a little bit, like later on. This wasn't recorded, but I said, well, okay, so if you're saying we can kill human hunters because they're the causal agents to the animals they kill, then that would mean that I give the dump, the junkyard example. Imagine these two young children, like 2 years old, and they're playing on a they're playing like in a junkyard, and one of them just happens to accidentally fall into the car compactor, and the other one happens to like be about to step on this big red button that's going to crush the other child slowly to death, and you happen to have a sniper rifle. Do you shoot that child because they're going to be the causal agent of the other one's destruction, even though that child is just 2 years old, has no idea what they're doing? And he balked on that. It's like, well, no, I don't think so. Well, and he kind of hesitated, and then he said, well, the difference is the fact that there's eating involved. So, so if the child was about to eat the other one, and I'm like, okay, how does that, like, why does that matter? Like, why, so fine, you would shoot you would shoot the demonic child that's about to eat the other one. Yeah, fine. I mean, there's a lot of sequela to that. Anyway.
Yeah, I see. My theory, he's running I don't think he's got. I think he's just running arguments that he finds are interesting. I'm not sure he holds any of these positions in any way. Like when I think Agnak had him on the downstream arguments of he lives in the desert and like these animals were eating, and that the natural predators got shot, and then there's like, see, it can explode out into different types of it can explode out into different types of like negative well-being across the board. But then he would like, oh yeah, but he sort of dismissed it. But for the argument to then, for the hypothetical to then work, it has to go plug back into reality, and I just don't feel like it did. Like you probably brought up a better one actually with the kids and because we have like an in-grouping for humans. I feel that's like the sticking point. You see what I mean? It's like we're going to naturally value humans over animals. It's just a thing we do. So we can name the trait and we can say, well, maybe there's no logical reason for it. We still got that value that humans are more important.
Yeah, so I push back against that sort of argument. I know it's that is I know it's sort of very tempting to kind of go to that because most humans do have that sort of natural predilection. But I think the whole point of any sort of concern for for moral right and wrong is the whole reason why justice is blind is depicted by that blind woman holding a scale is that when you identify you have a bias that then you have to actually control for that bias. That's why judges recuse themselves from cases when they care more about.
I'd like to maybe bring up something. We're talking about the sticking point between like humans and animals, but I would react kind of similarly with what I would call like a wild human, quote unquote, or indigenous people. Let's imagine that some of you may have already heard this hypothetical from me, but imagine that there's an island with cannibals on it. They've lived on this island for generations. They have to eat each other in order to get the nutrients they need. They don't constantly eat each other, but every once in a while there will be a battle, and then they'll eat the people who die there. And these indigenous people would be engaging in something that in our society, in our group, we would consider that wrong. But they have their own ecosystem. They're out in the wild there. If we are obligated to interact with the lion and the predator, then we're obligated in removing those indigenous people from those conditions and domesticating them as well, bringing them into modern society. So he would have to make the claim that we'd have to do that too. But I don't think we have that duty.
Well, I don't either, and I don't think I don't think that's entailed at all. It's interesting. There's actually a very similar real world case. There's a tribe in South America called the Yanomamo, and the way their culture works is that in order to basically become considered a man, and if you're not considered a man, then everyone steals your wives and you basically live as an outcast. So in order to be a man, you have to do something called unikai. The way you unikai is you go to a neighboring tribe and you have to kill somebody. And Usually, usually several people, like a gang, will go out to do this thing, this unikai. And they actually are pretty nice about it. They're pretty lenient, meaning that if like 5 people kill the same person, they're all unikais. They don't have to kill 5 people, so I guess it's kind of nice in that way. They minimize the amount
How
of murders.
compassionate.
Yeah, it's very compassionate.
So,
yeah, exactly.
do you have to kill like a warrior, or can you kill a baby?
I'm
Probably a
pretty
warrior or
sure.
something.
Well, I'm pretty sure you can kill anybody, but
I
it's
feel
been
like
a while since I read
killing a
it.
baby would maybe be. I don't know. I'm totally
Seems
mad
too
Well,
easy.
projecting here.
So there was a French anthropologist who studied this group, and he was very his name was Napoleon Chagnon, and he was very protective of their right to be able to live their lives the way they live it. But then there was another guy, I think his name was Albert, some Englishman, who actually, there was a Yanomamo who like escaped from the circumstance. I don't remember how, and became a huge activist when he saw the Western world of stopping this. And that guy and that anthropologist used this guy as an example to say, we do actually have, if not a duty, it certainly wouldn't be an infraction for us to go and reform the society. But then if Chagnon says, hey, you're going to ruin this culture and it's not your right and whatnot. So that sort of thing that sort of debate does actually exist in the real world, kind of similar to what you're talking about. But I guess I would say, we first of all, we don't have an obligation to help others, even to save others from others. We don't really have an obligation to do that. And the other thing I would say is that if you have a culture in which people sort of accept that if I kill, I can kill you as long as you can kill me, well, that's actually not a violation of justice. The violation of justice is when you have a culture that says we can go out and kill some outgroup member that can't defend themselves, that never actually agreed to this arrangement. That's an injustice. That's like so that's why it's unjust for us to go and kill animals, for example, because they never agreed to it. We're sort of agreeing for them that we're going to have this sort of interaction with them. I don't think that I don't know if that would be. You did another cannibal example that I liked more. Or I'm not. I think it was you. The one where like if you're stranded on a desert island and the only way to survive was to
that was
like
me.
Right.
That was me. I would do personally. I would do that. I would feel it's justified in a desert island situation. And then if we scale that up, the lion is in a desert island situation. And then the point is, are we obligated to remove the lion from a desert island?
Ooh.
See, I mean, and I would argue that in the desert island, you'd have an obligation to let yourself starve to death.
Perhaps, but I think either would be fine.
Well,
I would just see that as morally virtuous. I would. Yeah, I mean, the other person can defend themselves against me. There could be, we could fight it out.
What if they have no self-defense? What if
if I'm there with a disabled person, I would have a duty. Perhaps, yeah, sure.
Or it's like a very, very peaceful group that they've never, let's imagine it's a species of humans that has evolved to eat grass, and they're perfectly fine contentedly living on the grass island. And then you go there and you can't eat grass, you can't digest grass. The only option is to kill these humans that are perfectly fine living without you. Yeah, you'd have an obligation to let yourself die, not to murder these humans on a weekly basis to keep yourself sustained. I mean, we have this idea that survival
I don't agree
is
there.
this.
I don't agree.
We have this idea that survival is sort of like this end all be all, but survival is not, the pinnacle of life. That's not the goal of life. The goal of life is to live fulfilled, and you can't live fulfilled if you do that through the egregious injustice to others.
So here's why I disagree. Like, were you there when I mentioned my my rational lion? Like, there's a species of rational lions that are in our society just like us, and they're obligate carnivores, and they have to eat meat. Were you there for that?
Yeah, right. And I said that they'd have to die. They'd have to starve
right.
to death.
That's where you and I disagree. I don't think that
or die trying, or they would have to die trying. I mean, obviously, I think that people, and I'm sure these rational lions can be incredibly creative. And I know in the hypothetical there was no out for them and they would die. But I think in the real world, they would just keep trying to find alternatives until eventually they died. And I think that would be the right thing to do. Now, I'm not saying they would do that. I think that we have a tendency, until we become cognizant of our moral obligations, we have a tendency to be very prone to self-deception, which is very often, which is generally not going to be mediated by
Right, but
justice.
I think like
it's selfishness that
the
drives
context
self-deception.
the context of our moral obligations has certain entailments. For example, when we're both in a sinking boat, which would be the desert island, our moral obligations are different than when we're in a boat that's not sinking.
No,
So to judge our
that's an
behavior in a sinking
equivocation.
boat, I don't think it's an equivocation. To
No,
judge
I'll
our
tell, no,
behavior,
I'll tell you why it's an equivocation. I mean,
Okay.
because the equivocation is because in a sinking boat, it's sort of like it's like you are not the causal agent of their death because you're both on the same playing field.
if you throw them
It's like,
off the boat, you would be. That's the point. You throw them off the boat so the boat doesn't sink. You would be the causal agent.
Right, no, but the only other option is that you fall off the boat, or you don't fall off the boat. In either case, the other person dies.
No, not in either case. If the point is the boat won't fully sink if one person is thrown off. One can survive.
Right, no, I understand that, but you're so in the grass eating humans example, they don't need you to do anything. If you're there and don't eat them, they live. If you're not there, they live. So they don't need you. You need them.
Oh, so I see. I wasn't comparing it to the grass eating example. I was comparing it to two people on a desert island. And
if you're
the two people on the desert island.
Yeah.
Right. So both in that situation, it's analogous to the sinking boat. So the moral obligations there are different. Now that we're in a situation where there is a group of grass-eating humans that can survive without you, and you can't, then I think that changes the situation from being a sinking boat, and now our obligations are different.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay, cool.
I actually had this conversation with Stu, and what we came up with is like, imagine like two people are in a cave and they both like really need this one cup of water, right? And there are two versions of the scenario. One in which there's this water, and whoever grabs it first, the one who gets to live. In which case, I would say whoever grabs it first, is not violating the other one, right? But in the other scenario, one of them just due to sheer luck, genetics, happens to be a foot taller than the other guy, and the water source happens to be only within that guy's reach. In that case, it would be immoral for the short guy to murder the tall guy for the water. But the tall guy has every right to drink the water for himself, even though the short guy dies. Because in the second scenario, the tall guy doesn't need the short guy. The short guy needs the tall guy. So if the short guy exploits the tall guy for his resource, then then that's an immoral, unjust act. The tall guy was just lucky. He was genetically blessed to be tall, and there's no obligation for him to then draw lots or flip a coin to share the water. It's his water. He got lucky.
Right,
not everybody gets the same chance. It's just that's
if we
nature.
take the cave then and extrapolate it to the lion and the zebra, the lion just got lucky via evolution.
No, because the lion is using the gazelle could live with or without the lion.
But the lion's not a normative agent, and we can't apply justice to the lion.
Oh yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, that's funny. You got me to start arguing against my own position. You're right. Yes, in that case, the lion's not an agent. So right, it's
just luck.
That's
it's just luck, like the tall guy.
It's just luck, and that's why I treated the burning building example, where just a matter of do I save the lion by letting him kill the zebra, or basically do I not interfere, or do I kill the lion instead of in which case that would be maybe you can make a case that it would be wrong for me to murder the lion. I have to think about that. This is kind of more of a new thing that I've been kind of belaboring. But my current feeling is that you don't have an obligation, or you're not even encouraged on a moral level to kill the lion, but it's morally acceptable to kill the
Right.
lion.
That's sort of my position too.
But I'm not sure if there seems to be something a little bit weird about even saying it's okay to interfere and kill, a childlike being who has the moral cognizance of like a child, basically not a moral cognizance. I don't know. I feel a little comfortable with saying that, but it's just where I'm currently leaning. Whereas Avi actually says that that you should, not that you're obligated to kill the lion, but that you're encouraged, or it's a virtue to kill the lion.
Well, and there's another thing that I'm curious about Avi, because he's a moral subjectivist, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's just taking the position that when he's making a moral statement, he's describing a preference or an attitude, which has no assertability. So there's no imperative made. He's just telling me he really doesn't like it. So if he's going to say that there's an imperative and it's not just preferences, how is he doing that?
It's okay. So the way the AY subjectivists work, and I actually think this is, I'm not a subjectivist, but I sometimes fall back into the sort of subjective arguments when my efforts to try to explain moral realism fall flat, which they usually do, because they're probably not very good. So I'll fall back into subjectivism, and the whole point of the subjectivism is that you can have whatever values you want, but let me make sure that your values are consistent with themselves, right?
But why I guess the question is, why should that even be important to something that's just about preferences? Like, why do my preferences have to be non-contradictory?
Oh, because because most people have an aversion to having contradictory preferences, at least about things that are of importance. I mean, people are full of contradictions about bullshit.
Then there's the question of, like, why ought I care about those other people's preferences when it's not my preference, if morality is just describing a preference?
Because the idea is that you can reformulate someone's normative preferences by showing that they're inconsistent with other preferences that they actually value more highly. Because people generally like to have consistency about things that matter. So if they care a lot about one thing, and then they're made they're made aware that if they really hold this view, this value, that actually is diametrically opposed and contradicts this other value they don't maybe care about as much, then they'll flip that one. And
I guess
that, by the way, works really well when it comes to veganism, because people generally care a lot about saying that, let's say, a mentally disabled person deserves more consideration.
Sure,
they really care a lot about that.
That's
more
just
so than their desire to
into
eat meat.
That's just dialing into some type of emotivism or expressism, which isn't really a normative or rational claim. It's not making an ought statement there, other than to say, you feel this way about this thing in the world, you feel this way about another thing that's similar. I recommend you look at that and see if you want those two things to align. But there's no imperative for a person to do that if it is just dialing down into something like an emotional attitude or a belief. There's no normative claim there. So what happens is,
you're right.
You're just describing a psychological feature with very complicated language as a means of trying to manipulate someone's emotions. It's not a normative claim inherently.
Yeah. So
I mean,
can I ask a question though? So if you have an objective mind-independent morality, why ought I accept that?
I don't think it's mind-independent.
Okay.
But I mean, that's the argument that I make, but I don't think that I have gotten to the point where I feel it's strong enough to really stand up. Like if I was talking to, like generally when I have, I mean, I think I need to basically, become just better. It's something I've been trying to work on, but it's like, it's relatively new that I've been really trying to really kind of make the moral realism case as strong as possible. So I think there are holes in it, You know, and just so what I'll generally do is I'll fall back on something similar to what the subjectivists fall into. I'm not calling myself a subjectivist, but you know, but it works. It works to motivate people.
I would say my position is like a quasi-realism. It's not metaphysically or ontologically objective, but it could be objective from a rational standpoint. Something like a mathematic axiom would then follow, things that follow from a mathematic axiom could be described as objective. And we can discover these things through something like reason. And with something like a reason-based principle, objective morality is emergent.
Yeah. So would you say it's measurable? And that's what makes it objective?
Not that it's measurable. I mean, I think that measuring is, when it comes to morality, it's a way of living.
Right.
So to measure a way of living, I don't know if we could do that.
Yeah,
In terms of a prescriptive
I think
norm.
you can measure. I think there's a lot.
But it wouldn't be
there's a lot of-
prescriptive to measure it. It would be descriptive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I
think
can't
you
get from
can.
description to prescription. Sorry.
I mean, right. I mean, the Moore's open question is always a challenging one to kind of, or the is-ought gap, and these are always really challenging things to cross. But what I would say is that you can calculate injustice, and of course the clarification that I've had since my conversation with Kev is that the calculation is dependent on that that the engager of any sort of interaction has the capacity for moral reasoning, and basically has the capacity to do this sort of calculation. But the calculation itself is simply looking to see whether you have an interaction between an engager and someone who's being engaged, sort of the initiator and then the recipient, and you look to see whether the investments of both, and then you look at what both gain from that interaction. And if there's a disproportion between what is gained by one party over the other versus what is invested, if we invest an equal amount, then we should get the same amount back. And it's an unjust action if I invest less than you, but I get more out of this interaction than you. Then that's unjust, provided that I was capable of knowing better, or being able to do that calculation. And so that's the way I objectively define an unjust interaction, and that's just definitional.
And I think that's why vegan debates often just dial down into the meta ethics when you're talking to someone else, because the way of living that veganism prescribes could follow from a normative theory, but you have to accept the normative theory in the first place, and then from there make the argument why veganism would fit inside of it. And Avi is basically doing a similar thing with the animal predation problem, where he's using like a normative theory and then arguing from that baseline axiom why you ought to blah, 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 blah.
I mean, quite honestly, I think when it comes to Avi, I mean, the way I would challenge him, personally, like the part of it that I think is the weak link on it, is this thing that I said that could be offensive to hunters, but just the idea that the difference between a human, even though a human hunter is capable of doing the justice calculation and recognizing that, taking the life of a being that can feel love and pleasure and all these sorts of things is an asymmetric, because obviously you're investing, they're investing their lives and you're getting all the benefit from it. So that's like the maximum amount of disparity between investments. So that's why killing, exploitative killing, that means getting more than you give, is the hallmark. That's just sort of the benchmark. It's like the worst thing you can do as a moral agent. But I think that when it comes to animals, people have been so indoctrinated by the idea that somehow that's the exception to the rule. Like you have to not murder, you can't be unjust, you can't do all those things, except when it comes to non-human animals. People are so indoctrinated with that principle that you can't really hold people morally culpable in the same way. So I kind of hold the sort of the position that that we should treat perpetrators of injustice as essentially deterministic creatures, sort of like a lion. They don't really have like, at least as far as this particular subset of actions, they don't really have free will. It's very, very programmed and reflexive, and not like really. It's not like just it doesn't, there hasn't been that connection made. So we have to treat them as such. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't show more empathy for their victims than we would to a victim of like a fire or some other natural disaster. So I would, if I had two burning, like if you can imagine two burning churches, and we knew that one burning church was due to being set on fire by a lightning bolt, right? And then the other, burning church was set on fire because we knew some sort of racist arson who set it on fire because he hates, like, it's a black shirt, he hates all black people. I would, I had one fire truck, I would go try to save the victims of exploitation by the racists than I would before I went to try to save even though both of them, the lightning bolt victims, even though both of them are burning to death and both of them are suffering equally. So that's kind of, I take this sort of, it might seem to be sort of a contradiction, but I treat the perpetrators of oppression and violence and injustice, I treat them as determined creatures. I feel compassion for them, for their ignorance. But then when it comes to the victims, I treat them as still as the victims of an unjust agent. So there's a bit of a contradiction there.
Well, perhaps there's something that some insight that Kant maybe provided, which is whenever you're doing an injustice to a non-normative agent, it's not because of you're doing more harm to your rationality, to the fact that you have this ability to reason, to say that this creature has suffering. You have the ability not to impose the suffering on this creature. And if you partake in it, if you partake in that cruelty, in that way, you harm your own rationality and reason. And so you're obligated, by virtue of being a rational agent, to abstain from that type of cruelty.
Yeah, but you're still casting in terms of like some sort of self. I mean, sort of. It seems like in terms of like the self, as like harming yourself. And I don't think harming self can
and
ever be
cruelty
considered
towards
in
the animal. And cruelty towards the animal. Yeah, it's both. It's both.
I mean,
like,
that's a nuanced position that I'd probably have to think more about, because that sounds kind of complicated to me. And it might be fine.
You've read Fellow Creatures, right?
I haven't finished it, but I'm very familiar with that argument. Yeah.
Read chapter 8. The chapter 8 goes into this argument.
Oh, I didn't get all the way to chapter 8. Okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll go read chapter 8. Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably read chapter 8 today and get through all the arguments. She also puts in a syllogism there, and that syllogism has been hotly debated by animal rights skeptics.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out. I actually stopped reading it to read her earlier book on normativity, and I haven't gone back to it. I like I like her. You know what I mean? I think her
the first
argument
book
is actually way. I mean, I like that too. I think that Kant has the best approach, I think, to ethics that I'm aware of, and I like the fact that she's using it to apply to non-human atoms. I always thought was a failing by Kant. Ever since I first encountered Kant in like 27 years ago or 25 years ago, I was like, I initially had a negative reaction to Kant for that very reason, and it's great that this Kantian scholar is now applying it to animals. So yeah, I'm very grateful to her for it.
It always sucks when I meet people who are familiar with Kant and I say that I'm a neo-Kantian, and then I say that I use that Kantian position for my animal ethics, and they'll sort of laugh in my face and say something like, "Wow, you're using the arguments of a racist who didn't care about animals to defend animals."
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, no, she's really done. I think she's done a lot for Kant and also for ethics, because Kant's so respected. And and I think that Kant provides the only solution that can help me understand how psychopaths can have morality. So like that's the other thing that really makes him really important to me, because one of my suppositions or theories is that morality is not evolved, that it's actually fundamental to the nature of consciousness itself. But if that is the case, then how do we account for psychopaths?
Hi.
And I think that Kant might help. But anyway, yeah, that kind of. Where are we?
Someone said hi. I was just giving them space to speak.
We were about to shit talk Singer, I think. Someone was about to, I'm sure.
Well, after all of that argument, I can't believe you brought that stuff.
Dre, I'm going to ban you from the server right now. You know I'm going to do this.
That joke was pretty transcendental.
You can't do that.
My well-being's being affected right now.
That's very idealist of you, Twisted.
Stop being a cunt, Twisted.
You absolute hypothetical cunt.
Hey, vey.
Alright, can I just
what's
ban
interesting-
everyone now? Fuck
Yeah.
you.
Oh, you're gonna burn
Do what you
everyone?
must.
Okay, yeah, all right.
What is the director of stabbing role?
It's mod.
Oh shit! I'm now a director of stabbing. When did that
Yes,
happen?
sir.
You have
It
been
just
for the last
happened.
hour, but I know you're assigned on a mobile, so you didn't notice.
Oh, I appreciate the vote
Wait,
of confidence.
so you can be a director of stabbing even if you're a vegan?
Yeah.
I'm stabbing non-vegans, bro. Let's go. I'm stabbing lions to save the animal.
I'm sure he stabbed a carrot or two this time.
Yeah, just remember, there's nothing stopping you.
Murder.
I mean, I've literally stabbed an animal in the throat. I grew up on a farm where I had to.
Yeah.
The family,
I've run over an animal in a car.
You are now no longer ever a vegan.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and the fact of the matter is, I was driving the human speed limit instead of the animal speed limit.
Oh, God.
The animal speed limit is the minimum speed limit, +5.
Oh.
+5.
But the human speed limit is whatever the speed limit is. So if you're driving the human speed limit, you're not a vegan.
Rabbits just do not move out the road. They just sit there and look at you until you run them over.
Occurs to me that
Squirrels will
restriction
get out of the road and then run back in it.
One way. Yeah, they go both ways. They run to the side. They're like sort of zigzag in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Do you ever like approach like a flock of pigeons and you're in your car and you're driving very slowly to them, but they're all just sitting there and you see them go under your fender, so you have no idea like whether they're flying away, and you just trust the fact that they're smart enough to fly away and you're not running over them.
And they are not. I assure you, pigeons are fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's stressing me out. Like just the other day, I was at a gas station and there's like so many pigeons on the sidewalk, and I didn't like get out of my car and shoo them away. So I just drove very, very slowly, coasted over the pigeons, just assuming that they would fly away at the last moment. And I think they did, but I didn't see any dead pigeons in the aftermath. So if they hadn't,
in whatever place you are, do not hunt those goddamn sky rats.
Because they're rats. Why would you want to eat a rat?
No, dude, I'm talking about pigeons. You know that.
I'm aware. Would you eat a rat? I wouldn't.
No, but I would eat a pigeon. And
have you ever seen pigeons mate before? They're very passionate.
Jesus, Nick, what the fuck?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I think it's time Nick admitted that he's just a straight up pervert.
I
Bestiality.
actually have a breeding thing for pigeons. I am breeding. We call them lakka kabutar. That is, the pigeons that have a browny tail. I have a breeding system for them along with the chickens. So yes, I have seen them fuck a lot.